What's going on? Sean of Mass Swap Tutoring here, and I wanted to share something that happened um, a couple of days ago, um, in hopes that it'll help encourage you to take notes and to use notes when it comes to learning math and doing better in math. Now, I have a daughter who's in the 5th grade right now, and we were at home or something like that, and she was talking about how she is currently learning customary units of measurement. And in case you don't remember what those are, that has to do with, at least here in the United States, has to do with measuring length, like inches, feet, miles, measuring weight in ounces, pounds, measuring volume in cups, pints, quarts, gallons, and so on and so forth. So apparently that's something that she's learning right now in class. And she they learned it, and then I think they went on spring break, and she was talking about how, and I don't remember the whole story, but they learned it, and she said some things about it were kind of confusing to her. And so she wrote down some notes in her notebook. I think this was unsolicited, like she wasn't told to do it, I think. But anyhow, she was getting work over the break to do, and she mentioned how that stuff had been a little confusing in class, but she was glad. She was glad that she took notes on customary units because it helped her to complete her assignment over the break when she had no access to her teachers. Now, this is something I stress to my students all the time, and I can't stress it enough. Taking notes is incredibly important. At least it's been very important for me. When I got into especially high school and even more so college, taking notes from the the lectures of my teachers and my professors was key for helping me, one, to understand the material, but two, also for being able to refer back, when I didn't have my teacher around me. Now think about this, and this is especially true in college, but it can be true in grade school as well. When you are in school and your teacher is teaching a subject, I'm talking about initially introducing you to a subject, you're taking notes. It's probably impossible for you to copy down everything that they're saying. So you kind of have to have one part of your brain intent on taking notes on what they're saying, and the other part of your brain intent on listening. There is a kind of balance that you have to have. I think that kind of varies depending on the individual. So you want to listen so that you can kind of get what's being said and start to try to understand it. But then you also want to write stuff down. And so typically what I did is, as I was listening, of course I was trying to write down whatever was on the board, whatever they were writing on the board. But then I also tried to make sure I wrote down things that seemed very important, things that the teacher highlighted, or even things that were particularly confusing, that I knew I would need to go back later and try to make sense of. Okay, the teacher said this. Let me, see what does that actually mean. And so you won't necessarily copy everything down. However, for me, when I took notes, I would go back and review my notes, and it kind of helped me to, as I read through the notes, in my brain would come up some of what the teacher was talking about around that time. So it almost, in a sense, helped me to review the lecture at the same time. So I'm reading through the notes, like, okay, I remember that the teacher said this, that, and the other when we were talking about this particular thing here. What did he or she mean? You see what I'm saying? It helps you to go back. Another reason why notes are so important And this is why I just so so keep in mind, ultimately what you're doing, you're learning something. You're getting to the point where you're taking information and you're not just putting it in your brain, you're also processing it so that it becomes a part of who you are, it becomes a part of your thought process, it becomes information that you can use, not just taking up space. Because you ultimately want to be able to understand the information. And for me, taking notes helps in that process because when I'm listening to the lecture initially, I'm not necessarily understanding what they're talking about. I may understand a decent amount of it, but there's some things I'm not necessarily understanding. I need to go back and review, when I'm not necessarily receiving new information from the teacher, go back and review my notes so that I can then process and understand the material. A lot of students I see are just relying on what the teacher says, taking in that information, and then immediately trying to use it. Now, that can work to a degree, especially depending on who you are and how you work. But you're just relying on whatever memory that you have in that very moment. I consider that risky, or at least you're missing an opportunity to get a deep amount of learning and understanding when you're only relying on your memory and not using memory plus notes, if that makes sense. I can't stress that enough. I have students who are trying to rely on their memory, but what happens when you don't actually remember everything and you don't have access to your teacher? Then you could be pulling anything out of your head. Okay. So taking notes is going to help you to not just be winging it, like I think this is what this is. You can be like, okay, what is this? And then go back and look in your notes and confirm, oh, that's not what they said. It was actually this. And so now you're actually training your brain. You see where you would have gone had you not had your notes. And now you're training your brain on what's actually correct. You're making everything line up. So I didn't want this video to be long. I just wanted to stress this because it's so important for students to understand when it comes to learning math, but even other things, that you don't need to just rely on your own memory. I at least recommend against it. There are definite benefits, definite merits to taking notes, okay, and not just sitting there and listening. The last thing I'll say, and I really will be done, when you're taking notes, you have to be listening to the teacher, to the professor. You have to be, you know. So like if you're in class and you're not taking notes, you probably miss an opportunity to help yourself focus on the actual lecture that a teacher's giving. Especially in today's world, our minds tend to be going to and fro on different kind of things. So you taking notes, you have to be listening to be writing down what the teacher is saying. You see what I'm saying? So it helps to kind of focus your brain too. So anyway, I'm just saying all that to say taking notes and using notes is something that I very highly encourage. Obviously, it helped my daughter, and I haven't even really talked to her about that stuff very much. She's only in elementary school, but I know it helped me. It was huge for me. Notes were and still are huge for me for like learning and everything. Sometimes even just the writing down of stuff without reviewing it helps you to learn. So anyway, let me get off my soapbox. I hope that someone, perhaps you, watching this video takes to heart what I'm talking about here. Make sure if you need tutoring, that you look in the description to find out how you can sign up for tutoring. I have myself and a team of virtual tutors who are ready to help you in math subjects, grades 6 through 12, and even some college as well. So, use the information to sign up. Browse the channel, learn a little bit more about me and Math Swap Tutoring, or the website that'll be in the description as well. Y'all have a good day. Hey, thank you for watching this video. If you need math tutoring or you need SAT math help, look in the description to find out how you can sign up today. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you stay in touch with Math Swap Tutoring on YouTube. Have a good one.